This is the ADO Air 20, and it might just be one of the more practical folding e-bikes we've tested. So why is that? First of all, it's super light, but let's take a ride and find out more. Hey everyone, I'm John with Electric Bike Report. Before we jump in, I want to remind you that we have more e-bike giveaways coming up soon, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that little bell icon so you don't miss out. And please feel free to share this with your friends so they can join in too. But let's really dive into the details here. If you're looking for a bike to get you from the bus stop to the office, or you need to be able to carry a bike up 3 or 4 flights of stairs, I think you're gonna like this one. The ADO Air 20 weighs in at just 42 pounds, and honestly I think it feels lighter than it is. I'm not really a super strong dude, and you just saw how easy that was for me to lift. The bike's 36-volt, 345.6 watt-hour battery is effectively its seat post, and that helps to keep things really balanced. Plus there's no wasted space on the bike, and there's not much here to really weigh it down. For example, there's no cassette. The bike uses a single-speed drivetrain that makes it really simple to operate, so you can just use the pedal assist system or the throttle without having to worry about shifting. Another benefit is that this setup uses a Dece power carbon belt instead of a chain, which is longer lasting, does not require any lubrication, and it's also really quiet. The bike's battery is not currently UL certified, but it does comply with European standards like UN 38.3, and the bike itself conforms to the Machinery Directive, which deals with both electrical and structural safety. Our contact at ADO did tell us that they intend to pursue UL certification in 2024, so keep an eye out for that if you live in a place where that's a requirement. There are 2 versions of the Air 20, the CE or EU version with a 250 watt rear hub motor, and an international version with a 350 watt motor and a throttle. We have the international version here, but both use a torque sensor that tells the motor to give you more power when you push harder on the pedals. And in either case, the motor isn't super powerful, but with the torque sensor, it's actually a really nice combination. It feels a lot like a regular analog bike, except that you can get going a lot faster or ride longer without getting wiped out. The bike comes with hydraulic disc brakes with 160mm rotors, and there's no brand shown on those, but we'll see how they did in our brake test here shortly. Those are on 20-inch wheels with 1.95-inch street tires, and those give the bike really great maneuverability. The saddle here is pretty basic, as well as the handlebar grips, but those help to keep the bike's weight down. And there's not a lot going on in the cockpit. The left handlebar has the full color display and control panel, while the right side has the thumb-operated throttle lever. A quick note about the control panel, the bike should come set to just 3 PAS settings, but ours came set to 5. 2 of those didn't have any programming through the controller, so we changed the bike to 3 in the settings menu, and we'd recommend doing that just to avoid confusion if yours ships with 5. That's also something you can do through the ADO e-bike app, which gives you ride data tracking, navigation, and other settings adjustments for the bike. There's a small LED headlight on the front of the bike, as well as a battery-operated tail light beneath the saddle. And then the ADO website says that fenders should come in the box, but ours did not include those. We did get a phone mount and a little magnetic attachment that helps to keep both halves of the bike together when it's folded, and that's an optional accessory we definitely recommend if you're folding the bike regularly. We were happy to see that as it just makes the process easier, plus most folding bikes don't have anything like it. Speaking of folding the bike, let's take a closer look at how that works. So as with most folding bikes, the mechanics here are pretty standard. The Air 20 has a central hinge in the middle where the frame splits, and then it has folding pedals, as well as a telescoping and collapsible stem. I'll run through the process here just to show you what to expect. So that was super fast and easy, and I have to say I really like how the battery seat post combination slides down and actually functions as a little foot to rest the bike on. One quick note about the quick release clamp for the seat post. I loosened ours a bit for this video, but I had to keep it pretty tight while I was riding to keep the saddle in position. If you're smaller and lighter than I am, you might not have that problem, but it is something to be aware of. The folded bike measures 34 inches long by 28 inches wide by 24 inches high, so be sure to check that against your storage space to make sure it fits. But anyway, let's get into the good stuff and see how the Air 20 did in our testing. The Air 20 did a really solid job in our brake test. The pedal assist system on our bike stops at about 16 miles per hour, so for the sake of consistency with all of the other bikes we've tested, we pushed a little bit harder to pedal it up to 20 miles per hour before hitting the brakes. Then we measured how far the bike traveled before it came to a complete stop. So after gathering 3 sets of data, we calculated an average stopping distance of 21 feet 6 inches, which is about average when compared to all the other folding e-bikes we've tested, and average is good. We did notice that the bike got a little fishtaily when braking, and if we really hit the brakes hard, the wheels locked up and slid a little bit, but it wasn't a problem. I'd just recommend getting a little practice with the brakes when you first get the bike so you know what to expect and you can learn how to handle it when that happens. Bottom line, the brakes here did their job effectively, and we think the bike is spec'd appropriately, so we were completely satisfied with its performance. For our speed test, I recorded my ride when I measured the top speeds in each pedal assist setting, and then I also tested the throttle to see how quickly it could get up to speed. Let's check it out and see what happened. All right, we are here on the A Dece Air 20 to do a speed test. Pedaling right here with no motor assistance, getting about 12 miles per hour, so not too bad there. And let's kick it up to pedal assist 1. See what kind of a difference that makes. Very smooth, like subtle amount of assistance, but it's definitely there. Very quiet motor. Let me get around this bend. I can feel that torque sensor responding very quickly to any changes I'm making in my pressure, so I'm going to try to keep that consistent. And it seems like we're landing right around 14 miles per hour here. So let's bump up to pedal assist 2. And there's only 3 settings on this bike, which is really nice. Nice moderate level of power here. Pedaling's really easy. And looks like we're going right about 15 miles per hour. So let's bump up to pedal assist 3. And I definitely feel like I'm getting more from the motor at this point in time. Now, interestingly, the display here reads about 16. The app that we use for consistency is about 15.5 here, but that's what we're gonna go with. So, yep, 15.5, and that is our speed test on the Air 20. Okay, we are here on the A Dece Air 20 to do a throttle acceleration test from 0 to 20. This throttle here seems to top off right around 19 miles per hour, so we'll see about that. But then the other thing to point out ahead of time is that the throttle itself is throttle after pedal, which means that the bike has to be moving a little bit for the throttle to work. But let's see how it goes. Ready, set, and go. All right, picking up here. And we'll go off of this display when it hits the max. Still building. $18.5, 19. All right, there we go. So you could see that this bike was pretty easy to pedal without help from the motor. I measured 12.6 miles per hour there, which is definitely on the faster side. And that's really all because of the lightweight frame. With the pedal assist system turned on, there are just 3 functional PAS settings to go through, which keeps everything really simple. I measured maximum speeds of 14.3 miles per hour in PAS1, 15.1 miles per hour in PAS2, and 15.9 miles per hour in PAS3. The bike's maximum speed through the pedal assist system is right around 16 miles per hour, which is a little unusual for a Class 2 bike. Most go up to about 20 miles per hour, and the throttle here gets pretty close to that, right around 19 miles per hour, but we reached out to ADO about the pedal assisted limit. They said that with the single-speed drivetrain included on the Air 20, they chose to limit the top speed to avoid ghost pedaling, and I definitely didn't have any problems with that. We would like to see the max speed bumped up to the usual Class 2 limit though, which could probably be taken care of with an update to the firmware. But honestly, even as it was, the bike felt pretty zippy, so it's not a huge complaint, just something we think would help the Air 20 to appeal to more riders, especially here in the US. But the power distribution we saw across all of the PAS settings was very even and consistent. With the torque sensor, there wasn't a huge difference in feel between them unless I was going uphill. I could hit the bike's top speed even in PAS1, so there wasn't a huge incentive to switch up to PAS2 or 3 unless I really needed that extra power. But it was nice to have the option, and overall we think the bike did very well here. The Air 20's results in our range test were somewhat mixed, but overall it did well. ADO advertises a range of 100 kilometers, which translates to about 62 miles, but we measured between 36.3 and 46.4 miles when we tested it in the lowest and highest pedal assist settings. That's obviously quite a bit different from the advertisements, but considering the specs of the bike, its range actually ended up a bit better than we expected. Part of that is likely because of the torque sensor, which requires active pedaling, so that means that the motor is naturally more efficient, so you get more distance than you would if the motor was doing all the work. We expected our PAS3 test to last about an hour and 20 minutes, but our test actually lasted almost double that amount of time. We ride on bike paths and roads with lots of hills, so it's possible that we could have measured better range on flat ground. But either way, we think it's fair to expect between about 2.5 and 3.5 hours on the bike before you'll need to recharge. So overall, 36 to 46-ish miles is pretty decent, and it should definitely cover long commutes if you need the distance. If you're using this bike for shorter rides, maybe just a few miles, you're going to get quite a lot from a single charge. ADO's 62-mile claim seems a little ambitious, but we're pretty happy with where things ended up, since this is the type of bike where you'll probably be taking a lot of shorter trips anyway. As always, Justin performed our hill tests with the ADO Air 20 at Hellhole Trail, so let's see how the bike performed using just its throttle and also with some added leg power.
All right, so here we are on the ADO Air hill test, and this throttle only. I have about zero expectations that it's going to make it up. 350 watt rear hub motor, this style of bike, it's just, I don't know if I've had one make it up yet, and sure enough, yep, it's not going to make it. So kind of what we expected on the throttle test. Let's turn around and see how it does on the pedal. Okay, now we're back on the ADO Air doing the pedal test now. It's in PAS3, which is what we've got kind of programmed as their max PAS level, and I don't have crazy high hopes for it. It is a very lightweight bike, so we'll see how this does. You know, through this first hill, 9-ish miles an hour, 8. I will say, you know, I have to push down a little bit. This isn't one where I can just kind of like light pedal and get up it, but it's not too bad by any means. Again, this hill is not one that you should be able to make it up on. I will say the motor's pretty quiet, so this next section I will kind of be quiet so you can listen to it and hear for yourself kind of what this sounds like through this section here. Okay, so you can hear it's very quiet. Very quiet, which is nice. Got down to 6-7 miles per hour again on that last section. And, you know, I will say this kind of feels a little bit more like a torque sensor. I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head if it's a torque or cadence, but we'll talk about that in the next section. So it is more natural feeling, which means, yeah, I've got to pedal a little bit. You can hear me a little bit out of breath here on this. So I have a feeling the time, it's not gonna be at the top of our list for hill climbers, but again, I got up the hill and not horrible. So overall, not too bad for this style of bike.
So with only the throttle, the Air 20 didn't make it up the hill, but we kind of expected that would be the case. With the international version of the bike that we have here, the 350 watt motor peaks at 480 watts and puts out a max of 42 Newton meters of torque. Even with such a lightweight bike, that's definitely on the low side, and it just wasn't enough to deal with the steepness of the path. When pedaling in PAS3 though, the bike did much better since Justin was adding in his leg power. We measured 1 minute and 57 seconds there with an average speed of 9.3 miles per hour. That isn't super fast when compared to other e-bikes we've tested with similar motors, but A, the Air 20 still helped us to get to the top of a hill that you'd probably want to walk up on a regular bike, and B, with some extra testing, we figured out that if you hold the throttle lever when you're pedaling, you can get a little bit of extra help to make hills a bit easier. So the bottom line here is that the throttle works great on flat ground to give you a break from pedaling, but when it comes to hills, the bike can't do all the work for you. This is a bike that wants you to pedal, so you're gonna have to put in some legwork, but it will definitely make your life a lot easier than it would be without the motor. Let's go back out on the Air 20 for one more ride so you can get a better feel for the bike. All right, so we are here on the ADO Air 20 to go over the elements of its ride quality. And as a folding bike, as is pretty typical, you get quite a bit of adjustment when it comes to the fit. There's about 8.5 inches of adjustment in the saddle height with the seat post length, and then about 5 inches in adjustment for the handlebar height with the telescoping stem there. The reach is more or less set, but you do have a little bit of adjustment with the saddle rails. But with everything pretty maxed out here, I'm 5'11", and I've got a little bit of a forward lean to the riding position. And I think that, you know, taller riders are probably going to experience that. Shorter folks might be able to get a little bit more of an upright position. But, you know, that reach is relatively long. My arms are almost fully outstretched here. There's no suspension that comes on the bike. It is a rigid frame. So you're definitely gonna feel those bumps a little bit, but you can always stand to help soften those at least somewhat. There is actually really good handling on this bike, really good maneuverability. The tires are nice and tiny, so you can weave around with those pretty easily. They are 20-inch by 1.95, made by Chaoyang. They're street tires, but they honestly, I feel like they are pretty stable. They roll pretty smoothly as well. Not a lot of resistance when you're picking up speed. And then, so let's talk about that motor. It is a 250 watt rear hub motor that uses a torque sensor. So, you know, it responds really quickly to changes in your pedal pressure, gives you more power when you need it, and it can back off a little bit when you're, you know, just wanting to take it easy. So, okay, let's bounce back to the studio and talk about that stuff a little bit more. So ADO says that the Air 20 can accommodate riders from 4'11" to 6'7" with the range of adjustment on the seat post and stem. I had both of those maxed out, and I felt like I could have still used a little more leg extension, especially when going uphill. So taller riders are probably going to feel the same, but I think shorter to average riders are going to be a bit more comfortable. If I'm being honest, the saddle here was pretty firm. That wasn't the most comfortable after about an hour on the bike, but if you're using this for shorter rides, I think you'll be okay. And personally, I'd probably swap out the grips for something a bit more ergonomic, but I think the key takeaway here is that ADO has placed a high priority on keeping the weight of the bike down to keep it easy to move. After reviewing a number of folding e-bikes that weighed upwards of 70 pounds, I have to say that I actually really appreciate that. I liked the overall ride feel of the bike though. We haven't seen torque sensors very often on folding e-bikes, and I really liked that there was one here. It made the bike feel very responsive, and with just 3 PAS settings, it was really easy to just hop on and go. I liked the handling a lot too. This bike was really nimble, so those things made the Air 20 just a lot of fun to ride. I think functionality is really the big deal here, and that's something that the Air 20 does really well, even if there are a couple of minor things that need ironed out. All of our testers, including myself, were really surprised by how good of a feel this bike has. With an update to the bike's firmware, we'd like to see the speed limit brought up to 20 miles per hour, even if there is a little ghost pedaling, just so riders don't feel so limited. And we think it would be a little easier on new customers if there wasn't even the option for 5 pedal assist settings, since 2 of them don't really do anything. It's an easy thing to change if your bike ships the same way ours did, but we still think it's worth mentioning. But performance-wise, things are really solid here, especially when taking the bike's relatively utilitarian purpose into account. It has solid range, good stopping ability, and it'll help you climb hills you wouldn't want to deal with otherwise. It might not be the fastest thing out there, but it doesn't really need to be. It's made to get you across town a little more quickly and easily, and it's made to be easy to transport, and it absolutely checks both of those boxes. We were pretty impressed with the bike, and if you're looking for something along those lines, we think you'll be happy too. We'll leave a link to ADO's website in the video description down below, so you can check out the Air 20 and pick one up, pun intended. Please make sure to use that link if you do. It lets us know you appreciate our efforts, and it helps support us with no additional cost to you. We'll also leave a link to our written review in the video description in case you want a little more detail. But thanks for watching. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the ADO Air 20.